Joining me, I've got Craig Parry from Inventa Capital. Craig, thanks for doing this.
Well, always a pleasure.
So here we are at a precious metals conference, Beaver Creek. We were talking pre-interview a little bit. This is, I know, my favorite one. What's the sentiment here? Are you getting a vibe from the conversations you're having about what the big commodity that everybody's excited about is?
Starting to. I think, I've only had 2 meetings so far. Very, very good. People are pretty positive. I suppose everyone's still a little bit confused as to why we haven't seen the junior market take off just yet, but I've got a theory on that. So you're generally positive, and I suppose everyone's talking about certainly gold at all-time highs. Silver, a lot of chatter about silver. I think a lot of people expect that the silver price is about to run. Copper's always a favourite for any investor, so yeah, looking pretty good. And to judge by, we've got 3 companies here: Vizsla Copper, Vizsla Silver, and the royalty spin out, and then our uranium explorer Cosa. I think between us we've got somewhere in the order of 90-something meetings over the next 3 days. So a lot of people here, plenty of investors. So I think things are looking up. I think and you've certainly sort of seen the market really pick up. The majors have picked up in price. The mid-tiers are doing very well now. And now, a couple of the companies that I'm involved in heavily, Skeena Resources and Vizsla Silver.
Congratulations on that. I heard $100 million financing?
No, $1 billion. $1 billion US dollar financing, yep.
Oh, wow.
Done by Orion. Yeah, Walt and Randy and the team there at Skeena just done a tremendous job. It's a $1 billion financing package that came in ahead of permits. Okay. So it's an outstanding outcome. Gives us great certainty, gives our shareholders great certainty that the project's funded.
So that's the full project financing?
That's the full project financing. It came with an equity stub of about 19.9%, streaming associated component, and then debt as well. So. Yeah, tremendous outcome. The market loved it. I think the day we announced it, the market was a little bit confused and sold off. We were trading around $5, and then over the next month or two, it doubled in share price. So people are starting to get it. So they're performing well. Your Vizsla Silver's had a run from about $1.30 6 months ago to we're trading now around sort of $2.50, $2.60. We spun out a royalty company from Vizsla Silver. VROY is the ticker. Our share price was up that week, and we created a royalty business that's now valued at about $50 million, on its way to $200 million, I think. So I've been buying a lot of that stock myself. I think, so that's an outstanding outcome. And we've started to see the M&A cycle kick off. You've seen some big transactions. Of course, the biggest of them all was Newcrest being taken out by Newmont. But in recent times, we saw a Cisco Mining get taken out, a couple of other, Gatos last week. Yep. So you're starting to see those mid-tiers and that mid-tier M&A cycle really kick off. And Sean Rusin, from a Cisco, he tells me that when you're subject to a takeover bid, you very quickly find that these arbitrage funds that trade on takeovers become your major shareholders very quickly. So people sell out. That frees up liquidity for resource investors that have done generally very well because they're in a takeout story. And then that money starts to trickle down to the junior space. So I think over the next six months, it's going to be very telling. We're going to start to see the juniors start to take off. They're still in the doldrums firmly at the moment. Might be for another 6 to 12 months, but it's coming. The wave is coming.
So that's the theory you mentioned earlier, that it's going to be M&A that drives the capital flows, and a lot of these arbitrage funds are going to make it so that shareholders can liquidate quicker.
Yeah, M&A, exactly. And of course, there's knock-on effects there. People are starting to see that investors in a space that's usually tricky to invest in and sort of maligned at times start to see money, and people start to see the sort of outsized gains you can make in a mining bull market. Starts to trickle back in, and then as Doug Casey likes to say, when money comes into particularly big pools of capital like US funds, try to get position in the junior resource space. It's like trying to jam the volume of the Hoover Dam through a hose pipe. because there's not that many places you can park your money. There's sort of micro cap companies really. You see a wave of funding hit those companies, you see extraordinary returns. I've spoken with you before. My views on this, I think we're about to have the biggest mining boom of all time, given the sort of supply-demand fundamentals. So it's about to get interesting.
It's funny though. Like I was just chatting with the CEO of a junior company, and he's been coming here for a decade, and he was talking about how he's hardly meeting with any investors here. There's a ton of deal flow going on. There's a ton of business development, but the investor community really hasn't shown up in mining, and we see it in the commodity prices, but we still just haven't sort of seen that capital flow in yet.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if you go back, like here 2 years ago, there was sort of, it was just us issuers sitting around looking at ourselves and crying in our beer. Last year was much better. I think with my Vizsla Copper hat on, I had about 27 meetings. This year, about 35 meetings. A good chunk of those with investors, and some investors we haven't seen before, newly established funds, European funds that have been out of the space for a long time, all starting to come back. So, we're at the earliest of stages of seeing a serious return of capital to the sector. I agree with him to some extent. We're very fortunate that we've made a lot of these people money over the years, and so we usually get a good pool of a good group of meetings with investors. But I think also it's a great place to do corporate development type work, because everyone that you need to know just about is here. So I think Vizsla Copper, we've got 8 meetings with potential strategic type investors and partners and corporates. So it's a real smattering of investors and corporates. Lots of deals are being talked about. I've heard a few last night. It's interesting.
That's one of the themes that I'm noticing is I'm not seeing a lot of interest from the retail investor in the copper like micro space when we're talking about some of these micro copper deals. But when I talk to the management teams, I'm hearing that they're getting a lot. Their phones ringing off the hook from majors that are interested in their.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I was just saw the start of Michael Gray's talk. He's with Navoika from 1832. And Peter Bell, who's the chief analyst at Canaccord. Anyway, Michael, a great mate of mine, very, probably the most sort of highly regarded analyst on the street today, certainly the most experienced. He's been doing that for 30 years, I suppose. And he made that point that, whilst retail, exactly the same thing. Retail investors, a little bit disinterested at the moment, but you're seeing big cheques written by strategic investors into smaller companies. If you look at British Columbia, where Vizsla Copper's focused, we've seen Teck, Fortescue, BHP, South32, Rio Tinto, all starting to come into junior companies with good porphyry copper deposits. So that's a little bit of an unusual situation, and I think there's a recognition. I've sort of become friendly with Jonathan Price, who's the CEO of Teck. He made the point to me that Teck now needs to do that. If they're to backfill their production capability, you need to see exploration, and exploration hasn't been funded well enough by the market. So they're sort of, those majors are recognising that and starting to step in and fund juniors that have quality projects and people that can successfully execute on the work programs they have.
So let's talk about Vizsla Copper. You're a guy who's got a huge track record of success, and here I see this one company you're talking an awful lot about that has the tiniest valuation of all those companies you're involved with. Why should I be taking note of this if I'm watching this at home as a retail investor?
Yeah, look, I suppose my key, I love taking companies from a small valuation to much higher valuations. If you look at NextGen, ISO Energy, Vizsla Silver, Skeena, of course, where I was the chairman. It's always a fun ride. And if you get it right, it can be incredibly rewarding. You see the team around you make money and buy houses and things, so it's always fun. But the copper one's a little, perhaps I've created a rod for my own back, but I'm a passionate Canadian and I'm passionate about copper, and I think there's a real opportunity to capitalise on what is going to be a massive groundswell in copper demand over the next few years, offset by a supply side that's probably more constrained than it's ever been. Trying to permit a mine nowadays, very, very difficult. So I think there's an opportunity to acquire good quality projects around the world, and particularly in Canada, and build a mid-tier copper producer in record time. So that's what I'm trying to do. We've got a huge, Vizsla Copper now. We've got nearly 4 billion pounds of copper in resources, nearly 2 million ounces of gold. Our market capitalisation today is $13 or $14 million. What an absolute bargain. So we're massively leveraged to the copper price, and we've got a huge amount of exploration upside there. We've got 5, I'm calling them 5 walk-up drill targets that are basically sort of, in hockey parlance, open goals. So we've got 5 shots on gold and the chance of making real discoveries there. So I just love that opportunity. I love exploration as well. At the end of the day, that's sort of my bread and butter. I'm an exploration geologist by trade.
Do you still spend a lot of time in the field?
As much as I can. Yeah, I've been up to our wood jam project and poplar project a little bit over the last couple of months. Not as much as I'd like. I still prefer to do that and get out and look at rocks and see what's coming out of the ground. It's good fun. Yeah, I spend a fair bit of time down in Mexico at our Panuco project in Vizsla Silver as well. That's a tremendous place to go and hang out and see what, all these fantastic Mexican geologists and field assistants and other professionals, how they're going and how they're performing. It's outstanding to see the success they're having.
So, as an exploration geologist, if you're walking around in BC looking for copper, what are the minerals you're looking for on surface and might get you excited?
Okay, so I'll give you a very specific example. We bought the poplar project through an acquisition back in March this year of Universal Copper. We paid $2.7 million in Vizsla Copper stock to make that acquisition. Incredibly cheap acquisition. In today's dollars, that project's had over $50 million spent on it. But you look at the map, it's in a proven area. There's the Huckleberry mine just down the road. There's porphyry coppers mapped and drilled out all around it. And right at the centre of the property is the Poplar porphyry. That was discovered by Utah Copper back in the 70s. They sat their rigs there and drilled the heck out of that. They didn't fully drill it out, we noticed when we were in the field. And then you've got a proven porphyry terrain, and then no other drilling on the property much at all, a little bit of RC drilling. So we went down to a place called Copper Pond. We've put out a news release on this. We found a huge zone of alteration. So you're seeing magnetite in rocks, tourmaline, copper staining, outcropping potassic alteration. You don't see that too often, and pretty rare in that terrain to have a potassic alteration, K-feldspar, shreddy biotite, these things associated, very rare not to have that associated with a porphyry system. We then started mapping it and we stumbled across an outcropping porphyry. So we know that there's everything you need to see, all the alteration, outcropping mineralisation, outcropping porphyry, and now we've started to, we've compiled the mag, the geophysics. It's giving a perfect geophysical vector. We've got ZTEM over it, big chargeability anomaly there, mag low that's typically associated with magnetite destruction. Probably getting into too much technical information here, but and now we're doing IP lines across it. We've done soil geochemistry, and you've got a stonking great copper, silver anomaly surrounded by a big zinc halo, so classic geochemical zonation in these soils, and that target is screaming, drill me. So, we're at some point here in the next 6 months, we'll get a drill rig in there. I'd be absolutely astonished if that doesn't turn out to be a porphyry system. So that's what you're looking for. And that type of anomaly, all of those vectors, doesn't get much better than that.
So if I'm an investor watching this, I'm sort of hearing, okay, you guys have, in Vizsla Copper, you guys have a pretty big resource already in the company, and you're trading at $13, $14 million market cap. Now, I'd be thinking about it, if you guys were a grassroots exploration company and you guys were able to prove out stuff like that, I'd expect the market cap to be a lot higher than 13 or 14 million. Is hitting that big drill result going to be what sort of unlocks that value?
You'd think so. You'd think so. This market is so broken at the moment. It's astonishing. We put out a drill result from Woodjam, our southeast deposit, yesterday. extending the high-grade zone at southeast, also extending it up column, so 65 metres depth. We intersected 95 metres at about 1.1% copper equivalent, and the share price was down 15% on the day. So this market's sort of largely broken.
You've had a first-hand seat at seeing deals work and re-rate to much higher valuations. When do you kind of know, like what's that moment where you're like, okay, we're re-rating, this is real? Is it when you get one of those big investors, like a Sprott in? Do you just sense it from the liquidity from retail investors?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a few things. I suppose the only thing that's moving the needle in the junior space at the moment are extraordinary results. So that's a very good result in a system that's been known about, a known deposit. So the market sort of goes ho-hum a little bit. Yeah. If we drilled 100 metres at 3% copper, then that might be a different story. People would pile in and see that as something more significant. So it's got to be something big that really moves the needle for investors, that gets them fired up and writing cheques or buying on market. So we're not quite there yet. Doesn't worry me. I'll sit there in the market and buy 6-cent paper off people all day long. They're giving it away as far as I'm concerned. And eventually things turn around, It would help, of course, for us and any company at our stage to have a strategic investor come along, and that certainly sort of validates people's views on a project. Yeah.
Well, Craig, last question for you. Out of all the projects that you have going on, is there anything that you think our audience should be watching out for over the remainder of the year?
Oh, look, certainly, Vizsla Copper, we've got great results coming all the time now. We're still drilling. I think we've got probably 3 or 4 weeks of drilling to come, and assays coming behind that. So look out for those. Vizsla Silver, we put out our PEA a couple of months ago. Extraordinary numbers there. I think at spot price today, it's got 120% IRR and a $2.3 billion MPV. The company's trading at about a $600 million market cap today, so Vizsla Silver's got a long way to go. That's just a screaming buy. It's such a layup. We spun out Vizsla Royalty from the company recently. As I say, the share price didn't go down, went up on the day and on the week. Created $50 million for our shareholders, of value out of thin air. I think that's dramatically undervalued and well on its way to a couple $100 million Great Bear royalty type valuation. So I've been in the market and buying that myself. And then lastly, Cosa, our uranium exploration company, which is run by Keith Bodnachuk. Those guys are drilling and getting to target depth on one of the anomalies there at Ursa, where we had some pretty good results last summer. So keep an eye out for that one. If we get a sniff of uranium mineralisation, that one's off to the races as well. So lots of work, lots of exciting things happening.
Well, Craig, we always appreciate you sitting down and taking the time to do this with us, and hopefully you'll keep coming back on here as you guys hit that big porphyry at Vizsla Copper.
Thank you very much.